And that point about blockchain brought me back to an insight that I'd heard as a young operations management trainee many years ago. And when I heard that insight, it blew my mind. I remember saying, wait, how can that be true? Hello, I'm Paul Dowding, and in today's video, I'm going to talk about corruption in blockchains and what blockchains can and cannot do about corruption. And at the end, as a tease, I'm going to leave you with a conundrum. Blockchains are known for their immutability, and many think that if a blockchain is updated, it then can't be changed. But actually, anybody can change the data in a blockchain and even update the hashes to make it fit the new data. So how does the blockchain avoid this problem? Well, a blockchain is a distributed ledger, and we should emphasize the word distributed, because every node in the network has its copy of the ledger. Therefore, to accept a change, a person would actually have to corrupt everybody's copy of the ledger. Well, according to certain theories, maybe a majority, or 2/3 if you're required to meet Byzantine fault tolerance, but more of the Byzantine guys later. However, the reality is that a blockchain is not incorruptible. It's just corrupt evident. And that means that when an error or corruption occur, it's evident from the hash links not matching. And in the distributed ledger, that error or corruption would be rejected. And that point about blockchain brought me back to an insight that I'd heard as a young operations management trainee many years ago. And when I heard that insight, it blew my mind. I remember saying, wait, how can that be true? And that incredible insight was, you can't protect yourself from collusion. What that means is you can't make an incorruptible process. I was stunned. Here I am, ready to take responsibility for people's money and securities, and I can't guarantee their security completely. Now, banks have controls and authorizations, but for collusion, you only need as many bad actors as there are controls and authorizations. So banks could add more controls, but this adds time and cost to the process. So what they do to prevent collusion is to make it as hard as possible to do, and also very easy to spot. Now, with blockchains or distributed ledger technology, the corruption is prevented by mining in networks like Bitcoin or consensus, which is used in most of the commercial implementations of distributed ledger technology. With Bitcoin and the mining, any colluders have to theoretically have more than 50% of the computing power of the network. And that seems like a steep order, but in fact, in Bitcoin, with the concentration of the mining pools, and much more so in the lesser traded cryptos, the mining is being won by less and less mining pools. So corruption could possibly happen. It's also worth mentioning, as one of my LinkedIn connected friends has made clear, Keir Finlo Bates pointed out that the mining process is probabilistic. So you can win the competition with a lot less than 50% of the computing power. In fact, the miners that do win often do. Now, moving on to consensus, there's a concept which is called Byzantine fault tolerance. Now, it's a shame, though anecdotally appropriate, the definition of Byzantine is something that's excessively complicated. Now, the theory states that if you have good and bad actors voting on something, you need more than 1/3 of those actors to be bad for the vote to be wrong. So consequently, in Byzantine fault tolerant consensus, the network will take a 67% vote as good. Now, while this again looks like a high hurdle, there is the possibility of lazy voters just going along with the herd, and therefore they could be backing a bad vote unwittingly. The other problem is that consensus voting, particularly the counting of the votes across the network, expands exponentially, although that's a topic for another video. The consequence of that exponentially increasing computation, though, is that the solutions tend to break their networks into smaller shards or clusters or channels. And there are two real problems here. First of all, the 2/3 majority in those shards is much smaller, so therefore it's easier to corrupt. And also it's very hard to transact between those shards because they need to revisit each other's history every time they want to. From this, you can see why many of the commercial distributed ledger technology solutions are now struggling to implement any use cases which are of large scale. However, the point and really the conclusion of this video is that no blockchain is incorruptible, and you need to understand the limitations that make that possible, and your solution should make it harder, not easier, to corrupt. And now, the conundrum I promised at the beginning. Well, there are two primary ways of preventing corruption in a blockchain, and that is Bitcoin's mining or consensus algorithms. The problem is both these solutions cannot scale. They don't have a great capacity throughput, and they also have arbitrary and usually long latency in their processing. That begs the question, is there an alternative? Well, mining proves there's an alternative to consensus, and consensus proves there's an alternative to mining. So if there was a third alternative that was scalable, near real time, and high capacity, that would be something, wouldn't it? Well, hope you enjoyed this video, and if you have any questions, comments, or suggestions for future topics, leave them in the comments below. Thank you.